You've seen the blockbuster movie. You've heard the name whispered in horror documentaries and retold in paranormal circles, the name Warren. And like millions of others, you probably think you already know the story of the most famous haunting in American history. But here's the chilling twist. What if the movie you watched only revealed a fraction of the truth? What if the real nightmare wasn't centered on a single evil witch, but on a farmhouse teeming with restless souls spanning 8 generations of the dead? And what if, in a shocking reversal of expectations, the supposed heroes of this haunting, the celebrated investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, actually escalated the terror rather than resolving it? Tonight, we peel back the layers of Hollywood fiction to expose the forgotten truths, the suppressed secrets, and the horrifying reality that the filmmakers left out. This is the true haunting of the Perron family. The story begins in the cold, snow-bitten winter of 1971. Roger and Carolyn Perron, seeking a peaceful life, moved with their 5 young daughters into what they believed was their dream home, a sprawling colonial farmhouse that stretched across 200 acres in Harrisville, Rhode Island. The property was locally infamous, known as the Old Arnold Estate. On paper, it was an incredible bargain. Vast farmland, rustic beauty, a house with American history flowing through its beams. But the Perrons soon discovered the sinister reason why such a grand estate had been sold at such a low price. The seller's final chilling words at closing echoed in their minds. "Leave the lights on at night." At first, it sounded like a local superstition, perhaps a rural quirk. But within weeks, the Perrons realized it was not a joke. Over the next decade, this family would live through a nightmare, a house alive with voices, shadows, and presences they swore were not of this world. According to their accounts, some spirits were gentle and protective, others mischievous and playful, and at least one was a force of pure malice. For historians, the property itself became a puzzle of contradictions and tragedies, a place where folklore and death records collided in terrifying ways. The Old Arnold Estate had been tied to a single family line for nearly 8 generations, and the land itself seemed soaked in sorrow long before the Perrons arrived. When the family dug into its past, what they found was a catalog of tragedy. 2 suicides by hanging in the barn rafters, another suicide by poison in the farmhouse kitchen, the drowning of an 11-year-old girl in a nearby brook, the freezing death of an elderly man abandoned by the elements, and the brutal, unsolved violation and murder of another young girl. The ground beneath their feet felt cursed, as though generation after generation had left stains of despair that refused to fade. Among this grim history was the name at the very center of the movie's narrative, Bathsheba Sherman. The film depicted her as a satanic witch who had offered her own infant as a sacrifice to the devil, condemning herself and the house to eternal darkness. But what do the actual records from the 19th century reveal? Town records confirm that Bathsheba Thayer Sherman was indeed a real woman, and she did live on or near the property. But beyond that, the facts diverged sharply from the Hollywood tale. Nowhere in any official document was she accused of witchcraft or Satanism. The gruesome story that her child died after someone thrust a sewing needle into its skull appears to have been nothing more than a vicious local rumor. The truth is more mundane, yet equally tragic. Her infant most likely succumbed to one of the countless diseases common in that era. Bathsheba herself did not meet a violent, demonic fate. She lived into old age, ultimately dying from paralysis after a stroke. This revelation flips the movie's villain on its head. Instead of being an evil witch, Bathsheba may have been another victim of tragedy, gossip, and superstition, a woman whose name was twisted into folklore. And here lies one of the greatest secrets the Conjuring never told. The Old Arnold Estate was not haunted by a single spirit. According to the Perron daughters, it was more like a crowded purgatory, a house bursting with the souls of the restless dead. The girls claimed to encounter a variety of spirits, not all of them hostile. There was a kind, childlike ghost they called Oliver Richardson, who often played with the youngest daughter as though he were a forgotten sibling. Another spirit, affectionately called Mrs. Arnold, carried a maternal energy. She would, the girls insisted, tuck them into bed and even leave behind the comforting fragrance of fresh flowers. But not all encounters were gentle. A tall, menacing male spirit with a crooked grin prowled the main floor, sending shivers through the children. And then there was the presence they feared above all others, the unseen, hateful force they believed to be Bathsheba herself. This entity seemed fixated on their mother, Carolyn. Doors slammed violently in her presence. An unbearable stench of decaying flesh would seep into the rooms without warning. The unseen hands pinched her, slapped her, and in one horrifying incident, left her with a puncture wound on her leg that resembled the mark of a sewing needle. The family began to understand that they were not simply living in a haunted house, they were trapped in a complex, layered ecosystem of the dead. Enter the famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. In the movie, they are painted as the brave saviors who arrived to banish the evil. But the Perrons' account tells a far darker story. They insist the Warrens only visited the property a handful of times, and their involvement climaxed not with an exorcism, but with a single, terrifying seance. Lorraine Warren conducted the ritual in the kitchen while Andrea Perron, the eldest daughter, secretly watched from the pantry. She described scenes straight out of a horror film. Her mother speaking in languages no one recognized, her body levitating from the chair, and then being hurled across the room by an invisible force. Instead of cleansing the house, the seance unleashed something uncontrollable. The chaos drove Roger Perron to lash out. Furious, he struck one of the investigators and demanded the Warrens leave at once. For the Perrons, that night was not salvation, it was the beginning of an even darker chapter. They had hoped the presence of famous investigators would drive away the entities that plagued their home, but instead the family believed the Warrens had ripped open something they could not control. The seance did not banish spirits, it multiplied the activity, intensified the violence, and left the house steeped in a thicker atmosphere of dread. What had once been strange noises, sudden chills, and unexplained shadows soon escalated into direct assaults. Carolyn Perron, already the target of the house's malice, reported that after that night she felt stalked in every corner of the farmhouse. Objects flew from shelves, the stench of rotting flesh lingered longer, and the sense of being watched was unbearable. The Perrons came to see the Warrens not as rescuers, but as intruders who awakened a sleeping storm. Far from saviors, the Warrens were remembered as the spark that ignited an inferno the family would be forced to endure for nearly a decade. And here lies another rarely told truth, one the movie carefully omitted. After the seance, the Perron family did not escape in a climactic, triumphant ending. In reality, they couldn't leave. Roger and Carolyn were financially bound to the old Arnold estate. The farmhouse was their only home, their savings consumed by the purchase, and selling it was impossible. Who would buy a property rumored to be cursed? For 9 more long years, they endured life inside a house they believed was alive with spirits. Imagine the weight of living each day knowing nightfall brought new horrors. The daughters grew up not in safety, but in survival mode, learning to distinguish between the presence of a benign ghost and the approach of something hateful. It wasn't until 1980, nearly a decade later, that they finally managed to move away. By then, the house had become not only their home, but their prison. The Hollywood version of events, with its neat conclusion and victorious ending, was a fabrication, just another ghost story, polished for the silver screen, while the real family's suffering was buried beneath the credits. And so the questions linger, stubborn and unresolved even today. Was the Perron haunting a genuine brush with the supernatural? Or was it a family crushed by stress, isolation, and suggestion, spiraling into a shared nightmare? Was Bathsheba Sherman truly the witch of legend, or just a tragic woman scapegoated by gossip across centuries? Did Ed and Lorraine Warren help bring clarity, or did they sensationalize the parents' suffering for their own notoriety? And did The Conjuring honor the reality of a family's decade-long torment? Or did it simplify an intricate and horrifying story into a digestible Hollywood fable? The truth remains elusive, suspended between history and horror, fact and folklore. Like the restless souls said to still wander the old Arnold estate, this debate is destined to haunt us, unresolved, forever. And now I want to hear from you. Do you believe the Perron family story was a genuine haunting? Or was it a case of fear, folklore, and imagination colliding in the worst possible way? And what do you think of Ed and Lorraine Warren's role? Heroes or provocateurs? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the story behind The Conjuring, be sure to like this video, subscribe for more hidden truths behind famous hauntings, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chilling tale.